I've seen a lot of really disturbing stuff throughout my life, but nothing from my past experiences could have stopped my hands from shaking so hard right now. I don't know what the hell is going on at this school, in that godforsaken room. I was never the type of guy who got excited for assignments, whether it be hostages, bomb threats, shooters. The adrenaline rush only lasts for so long. The fear kicks in quickly after. Only got one life after all. The worst cases are the ones with kids involved. I have a niece who's innocent and carefree beyond comprehension. My skin crawls thinking about her being exposed to those kinds of situations. Safe to say, I wasn't looking forward to whatever task laid ahead of us when we were called in. When we arrived, there were already 6 or 7 police vehicles parked outside, with a massive crowd of evacuated students standing outside. A lot of them looked a combination of utterly shocked and terrified, like they'd just been chased through a cemetery by a machete-wielding demon. As we entered the building, we were caught up to date by one of the police officers, but he was hardly any help. We don't know what to do. They're in room 203, but we can't go in there." "Can't go in there? What do you mean?" Dex, our unit leader, asked him. He stumbled out a mostly incoherent response, skin pale and eyes wide as he did so. From his expression, you'd assume that he'd been to hell or something of a comparable nature. Obviously, we weren't taking this lightly. We tried getting more information out of him, but he was adamant that he didn't know anything beyond the fact that we couldn't go into the room under any circumstances. "We'll figure it out," Dex ended up saying to him, realizing that trying to converse with the guy was getting nowhere. The officer simply nodded his head in response, not confidently though. We traversed into the school and up to the 2nd floor, all alert as hell. In the utter silence, the place was rather eerie. Not that I ever liked school regardless. Once we ascended the stairwell, room 203 was just to our right. It wasn't really what we expected. No blood, no signs of a struggle, just a room. However, it wasn't silent in there. We approached the door cautiously, listening intently to what was going on inside. It sounded like a teacher giving a standard lecture, but obviously, that wouldn't have warranted a school-wide evacuation and subsequent police backup. Jensen, another officer, tapped me on my shoulder, pointing to the crack underneath the door. I didn't see it at first, but a small stream of blood had begun oozing out from underneath. "Ah, hell," I thought to myself. Even though I was expecting something like this sooner or later, it was still jarring to see. I wanted to bust down the door right then and there, unleashing a flurry of lead into the perpetrator's skull, but that was obviously impulsive. He might have had hostages, or wired the door to explode upon opening, or something of that nature. The police officer's words also stuck to my brain. Sure, he seemed like a maniac, but people just don't become that way through arbitrary means. He'd definitely seen something bad lurking behind the door, and I wasn't eager to find out what. Still, we had to figure out a plan. I tried listening closer, in an attempt to discern what the person was saying. Now, I wasn't sure if they were speaking too quietly, or if they were using another language entirely, but I couldn't make out anything explicit. But the more I listened, the more obscure their tone and speech patterns appeared to be. It wasn't like somebody giving a lecture at all. It was more akin to somebody monotonously reciting a series of separate and unrelated passages in succession. Eventually, Dex stepped up, banging on the door. "What's your purpose here? You got any demands? At the moment, we're willing to cooperate, but we can't do that if you don't communicate with us." No response. We tried negotiating for 10 more minutes. The speaker paid no attention to us, simply continuing their obscure diatribe to the audience of presumably captive and horrified students. "Screw it," Dex said, frustrated. "I hate dealing with crazy lunatics." He pulled out a radio and began talking to another unit. Soon enough, 2 more teams were on their way, one to monitor the windows from outside and one to take a position in the room directly under 203. We were trying to consider every possible angle here. About 15 minutes later, the outside team showed up. Of course, there was nothing much to report on, given the fact that the windows were boarded up from the inside. Still, they had multiple snipers take their vantage points. They were more or less there in case things went absolutely belly up. "This is some crap," Axwell, another officer, said. "If they end up never telling us anything, are we just going to wait here forever? The kids might die of natural causes instead." I wasn't going to be the one to say it, but I sure was thinking it. There were no easy solutions for situations like these. Another 5 minutes elapsed before the ground team showed up, announcing to us over the radio that they were making their way to the room underneath. The radio crackled once again. "Hey, Dex." Dex picked it up. "Yeah? Something wrong?" I don't think we should go inside." "What? What the hell are you talking about?" He was cut short by something rather jarring. Not a noise. More so, the absence of noise. Whoever was inside the room had stopped talking. Dex put the radio down, ready to negotiate once again. "You finished? Can we talk now?" he asked. Suddenly and wholly unexpectedly, the door opened just a crack. Thankfully, I was on the side closest to the doorknob, which meant I wasn't able to see anything inside. But as for the 3 officers, who did, including Dex, well, I'm not quite sure what happened to them. I remember feeling a gust of boiling air seeping out and some kind of deep purple glow emanating from within. At a point, I thought I could see Dex's eyes beginning to leak blood, but that may have just been my imagination. All I know is that I blinked a few times from the heat, and a few seconds later, 2 of the officers were gone and the door was closed, leaving Jensen by himself, kneeling on the ground while covering both of his eyes with his hands. We tried getting him to talk, but he wouldn't budge. In fact, he wouldn't move an inch from his bizarre position. At that point, I was beginning to panic hard. This evidently wasn't a normal situation at all. Lee was also frustrated, banging on the door and barking out orders as if whatever screwed up entity lurking in the room cared at all about his grievances. And then he made a drastic mistake. He took his rifle and began breaking the door down with it. He managed to get halfway through before succumbing to whatever fate Jensen had just before him. I turned around to see him also covering his eyes, frozen in the position on the ground. I tried not to look at the purple light flowing out from the holes in the door as I made eye contact with Axwell. We were both ready to get the hell out of there. I took the lead, rushing towards the stairwell, but after about 2 seconds of running, I heard a scream from behind me. Some kind of large insect-like appendage shrouded in a dark violet smoke had burst through one of the holes, grabbing him by the waist. I reckon that if I were a single second later, it would have done the same to me as well. I tried shooting at the thing, but my bullet simply bounced off it. It pulled Axwell in shortly after, demolishing the door with it. The room was completely open now, but I wasn't planning on investigating. Just like that, I was the last man standing. I bolted down the stairwell and through the first floor hall, only to find the path to the nearest exit blanketed in the same smoke that was coming off of the appendage. There was no way in hell I was going to try traversing through it. I picked up my radio, attempting to contact the floor unit instead. "Where are you guys? What's going on?" A shaky voice answered on the other end. You better hide." "Hide?" I questioned. "Why don't we get our asses out of here instead?" I'm looking outside the window right now. Something's happening out there." Given all the commotion, my mind had automatically filtered out the noise. I concentrated, hearing suppressed screams and sporadic gunshots emanating from beyond the walls of the school. "Ah, come on," I muttered. I did as I was told, stumbling into a stray classroom and barricading the door behind me. The room I'm in now doesn't have any windows, so I can't tell what's going on outside. I've been checking for new updates on my phone, but nothing. I'm also averse to using my radio to call for help because it might give my position away. I don't know what the hell's lurking out there in the hallways, but I can certainly hear something moving around. Not sure how far it is, though. I guess I'll just have to wait here until somebody comes for me. Let me tell you something about myself. I'm not an incredibly smart guy. The fact that I've even made it this far is somewhat baffling to me. I mean, I've got endurance, I guess. Not a terrible shot either. But when it comes to decision making and thinking before I act, well, there's something to be desired there. While waiting in the classroom, I thought I was hearing something in there with me. Of course, I was already on edge, so this pushed me over my limit. I stood still, anticipating absolutely anything. And then I heard it. A sneeze. But my brain didn't register it as a sneeze until afterwards. At the moment, my frenetic mind filtered it through as a threat. It'd come from a closet in the corner of the room, so like the jumpy idiot I was, I fired off a reactionary shot, busting a hole in the wooden frame. "Yo, relax!" whoever was inside shouted. They kicked the door open, hands up in a don't freaking shoot position. It was a kid, maybe around 15. "Oh, thank God!" he exclaimed upon seeing me. "Cops are here." "First of all, I'm not a cop," I responded. "Second of all, get ready to run. We've made too much noise here." The kid was confused at first, but it didn't take long for him to realize what I'd meant. I could hear whatever atrocity that'd been lurking in the halls now standing right outside, with nothing but a wooden slab separating us. I raised my rifle as it simultaneously busted down the door. It was an inexplicable entity. I'd always pictured what I believed demons or aliens or whatever extra-dimensional creature would look like in my head. An understanding cultivated through exposure to movies and video games. Still, seeing something like that existing right in front of your face was enough to make the idea of staying sedentary in a room cut off from the rest of the world for the rest of your life not so bad. I can't think of any pre-existing creature on Earth to compare this to, so I'll just try describing it. A mass of pulsating, fleshy blue spheres joined together atop a mechanical anthropod-esque body, with two bulky robotic arms ending in large claws. Surely some experiment gone horribly awry. Not sure why it was here, though. The kid behind me got a glimpse of it as well, rendering him utterly speechless. The robot centipede creature lurched forward, managing to slash open my protective vest like it was butter. Fortunately, the creature was also a glass cannon. I emptied about half my magazine into its bulbous head, bursting open each one of its spheres. It reacted erratically, swinging wildly and undulating its body, destroying the room in the process. I'm pretty sure that I'd blinded it or something. "Come on, kid," I shouted at him. We ran out of the room as the creature continued its destruction. There were a ton of questions swirling around in my head. Of course, the main one being where the hell we were heading next. I took out my radio and asked the officer on the other end if things had settled down outside. No response. But from what I could hear, it sure as hell didn't sound like it. "Where are we going?" the kid asked. "Beats me," I thought to myself. "What are you still doing down here?" I asked him instead. "Well," he began, "I was in the bathroom when it happened." "Okay, still doesn't explain why you didn't evacuate with the rest of them." Look, I was watching YouTube in there with my headphones in and didn't hear anything, alright? When I came out, everybody was gone, and I was hearing weird crap coming from near the entrance, so I found a place and hid. It happens, you know? Does it really? I thought. But I wasn't going to bother lecturing the kid about it. Not the right time or place. Also, I hardly cared, if I'm being honest. At the moment, we were stuck between a rock and a hard place. Inexplicable, unknown events were transpiring outside, while some kind of feature ritual fest was going on inside. I reckon that we simply needed to find another place to hide until everything blew over. If it was going to blow over at all. I did have my silent reservations about it. I didn't want to admit it either, but the kid being there made things so much more complicated for me. Yeah, not very heroic. I know. We turned a corner, almost running into somebody in the process. I had a mini heart attack as I began raising my rifle again, only to realize that it was another officer. I stopped in an attempt to talk to him, but the guy just ran right past us, with a near catatonic-like expression on his face. Of course, that could only mean one thing. Something was chasing him. Begrudgingly, I took a quick peek down the corridor he'd come from, seeing a 7-foot impossibly muscular humanoid covered in purple flames, slowly walking towards us. The ground beneath cracked with each one of its steps.
"Where the hell are you going?"
It crackled, deep and grating.
"You're just getting a preview of the new empire."
Oh my God. I didn't let the kid finish his statement, dragging him away and pushing in front of me as I ran. As we navigated through the halls, I was beginning to hear a chorus of voices from the floor above. They sounded like the kids, but obviously not the regular kind. More so the ones that had been transformed through the means of otherworldly rituals. Truth be told, I was actually planning on quitting the force sooner or later. I had funds saved and a solid plan to go with it. I never wanted to be a career officer, but I just couldn't pull the trigger. And look where that reluctance got me. Right in the middle of who the hell knows what. Eventually, we found ourselves in another classroom, once again barricading the door behind us. This one had windows, so I immediately ran over, trying to get a glimpse of what was going on outside. But I couldn't understand what I was seeing. It was pitch black. I checked the time. It was only 4:30 p.m. I assumed that the windows had been covered up, but that idea was quickly discarded when, through the apparent haze outside, a hand pressed up on the glass. A hand with a bloodshot eye at the center of the palm. It pressed harder, causing a web of cracks to form. At that moment, it seemed like there was nowhere safe to go, nowhere to hide. I dragged the kid out of the room once again, only to find the colossal fireman waiting for us there. He was grabbing the officer that had been running away earlier by the neck, choking the life out of him. I emptied the rest of my bullets into the blazing monstrosity, causing said monstrosity to flinch only slightly. He chuckled, low and throaty, as he dropped the officer's lifeless body to the ground.
"Guns are something, aren't they? A cruddy remnant of the old world."
He stepped forward, throwing a punch directly at me. Despite using both of my forearms in a cross-guard position to block, the impact still sent me flying into the lockers, rattling my bones and singeing my uniform, along with the skin underneath. The kid screamed, darting away from the scene. A good decision at the moment, but at the same time, well, he was pretty much screwed. I wasn't in much of a better position myself, trying to find my feet after being staggered by a single punch. The fireman continued to approach me, eyes fanatic, with a grin that was beyond deranged as the flames roared across his body. I was still trying to pull myself together as he got within a few meters of me. But then, almost out of nowhere, his head was cranked to the side by a swift, blurry fist, sending him reeling. I looked over to the adjacent corridor, seeing a brawny figure wearing a suit of black body armor and a skull-like mask. He stood there, fist outstretched, with purple embers resting atop his knuckles from the impact. "Hey there," he said through the holes in his mask. "I'm the backup." Did this guy just say backup? It was a bizarre thing to consider since I thought we were supposed to be the backup. But then again, stranger things have happened. In fact, stranger things were actively happening. Backup? What backup? The armored beefcake ignored my question, putting his attention back on the fireman instead. Not that I minded that decision, to be fair. The fireman jolted back up, releasing a vortex of flames that nearly singed my eyebrows off.
Ugh!
It screamed.
The new world will have no place for fodder like you. This is...
He was interrupted by another bulky fist being drilled into his jaw, rendering him immediately unconscious. The backup nonchalantly shook the flames off of his hand, dusting stray embers from his clothes in the process. Weird how the cool-looking ones usually end up being weak. Seemed like a level 3 threat. Level 3? What? What is this? Who are you? I launched a series of feverish questions at him. He scratched his face through an opening in his mask. If I tell you, I'm gonna have to brainwipe you. The response froze me for a second, and then he burst out laughing. Nah, I'm kidding. I wouldn't be the one to do it. The suits would. What? So who are you? I'm Kaz, U.S. Military, Holy Soldier Division, Class 2. Whoa. What the hell did you even just say? I responded, utterly baffled. He chuckled. Wouldn't expect you to know about it. They brainwipe everybody who does, after all. Okay, I said, trying to compose myself. So what's going on here? Your guess is as good as mine, buddy. They call me up for these weird missions all the time. They've labeled them unique situations requiring divine intervention. Divine? Holy, what's all that crap about? Well, they can't really explain our abilities, so they've put it on God. He made air quotes with his fingers as he said the G word. Your abilities? Like what? As I finished the question, a writhing purple tentacle broke through the roof, dripping caustic liquid that dissolved the floor beneath. That looks like a level 6. He turned back to face me. You can stay and find out, but I wouldn't recommend that. It might get a bit hectic. I didn't take his advice at first, thinking that I'd die instantly if I tried going off by myself. I stayed and watched as the tentacle descended further, furiously wrapping itself around Kaz's torso. But instead of being dissolved, he began attempting to rip the appendage apart with his own bare hands. During the scuffle, a small drop of liquid found its way onto my arm. It stung like hell as it seeped into my tissue, feeling like a boiling needle being drilled into your skin. As soon as that happened, I was out of there. But of course, I still had no idea where I was going. I could hear even more commotion going on outside, including some kind of a booming robotic voice, followed by the sounds of rocket launchers. Eventually, I found what I believed to be another officer, standing at the end of a hallway with his back toward me. Hey, I called out, half whispering, hoping to draw zero attention. When he didn't turn around, I began walking towards him. About 3 steps in, the rational part of my brain began pulsating, causing me to stop and consider my situation. Yeah, there's no way this guy's gonna be normal, I thought. My conjecture was proved right when he turned around, revealing a mangled face resembling the rough design of a conventional jack-o'-lantern. He was also holding a glowing purple knife. The former cop let out a giggle so painfully unnatural to the point where it felt like fingers were running down my back. But I quickly realized that it wasn't the laugh that spurred that odd sensation. Somebody was literally touching my back. I whipped my head around, seeing a tall, pale man dressed in a charcoal black suit with violet swirling cyclones for eyes.
Do you understand now? Do you sense your ultimate duty?
He said to me, smiling like a lunatic.
You too could be part of the new world as one of my messengers.
Messengers for what? I asked, trying to stall for time as I inched towards an adjacent hallway to run down.
For me, of course. The prophet, the new Messiah.
I don't know, I stammered out, trying to avoid his hair-raising glare.
Or I could just send you to hell right now.
So, turn into a demonic jack-o'-lantern or die. Both fantastic options, really. Luckily for me, a familiar figure staggered into view a few moments later. It was Cass, looking like he'd been through a meat grinder. Jeez, that was tough, he said, breathing heavy. He bent over for a moment before looking up at the pale man. Ah, damn, this guy again, he muttered. The pale man's face devolved into an explicitly malicious grimace upon seeing Kaz.
A heretic calling himself holy. You dissidents should have killed me when you had the chance.
Kaz sighed. Nobody's calling themselves holy for the last time. That's just the title they gave me, you dang idiot. The pale man let out an ominous chuckle before levitating.
Do not take my name in vain, heretic.
Kaz looked over at me. Hey buddy, you better get out of here. I'm only going to be able to keep him occupied for a few minutes. This dude's a level 10. I still had no idea what that meant, but it sure as hell didn't sound good. In any case, I ran away from the situation as the two clashed behind me. As much as I hated the situation, I hated my weakness even more. Despite my growing resentment for the job, one thing that kept me going was the general perception of the SWAT as some badass protectors of the public. But I hadn't saved anybody since entering the school. In fact, the kid. Dang, the kid. I was gonna let him die here, wasn't I? Not that I could do much, though. I wasn't so safe myself, being chased by the blade-wielding officer. But what did I spend all those years training for? I'd been in life or death situations before. Did I run then? Hell no. So why was I running now? Just because paranormal factors were being thrown into the mix? I laughed at myself, reflecting on my cowardice. I stopped running and drew my own knife. Time to deal with this myself, I thought. Time to become what the public thinks I am. I stepped forward as the demon officer rushed me. I managed to dodge his first swing, giving me an explosion in confidence. I capitalized on the adrenaline rush, slamming my knife into the back of his head. But then the knife shattered upon impact, and my heart subsequently dropped. The officer turned around, shoving me about 20 meters back. My whole body was stinging as I pushed myself back up. Yeah, never mind, screw it. I was still trying to find my balance as the officer continued striding towards me. Like I've said before, near-death experiences were hardly alien to me. But in every previous situation, my life still felt like it was in my own hands. As if I had at least a marginal degree of control over my fate. But at that moment, the prospect of death felt imminent, and it was the scariest moment of my life. As the distance between us continued closing, I spotted two figures turning the corner at the other end of the hall. I thought they were just more creatures at first, but then I realized they weren't moving like creatures. And they sure didn't look the part either. I picked up my pace, quickly stumbling to a stop right in front of them. It was a man and a woman, both appearing to be in their mid-20s. The man was tall and built, sporting what appeared to be a mechanical exoskeleton over a tank top and cargo pants, while the woman was of a more slender physique, wearing a thick jacket and tight black shorts. She also had a pair of large robotic goggles around her head. "Whoa there," the man said in a wholly unfamiliar accent. "You all right?" Out of breath, I replied mostly incoherently, simply pointing at the officer over my shoulder. The woman's expression remained stagnant as she drew a ridiculously large pistol from her jacket, firing off a round that caused my ears to ring for around half a minute. But when I turned around, the officer's entire upper body had been obliterated. "Well, that'll do it," she said, her accent being the same as the man's. "Now maybe you can help us out, and we'll call it even. You see, we're looking for a dickhead named Trent Raisin. He also calls himself the Messiah or something. He's got a big bounty on his head that we'd really like to grab before anybody else does. Now have you seen him around?" Thank you for making it this far. I hope you enjoyed the video. I just wanted to quickly let you know about a couple things I have going on. I have an Instagram where I post more personal things about who I am. It isn't just all creepy stuff. You can find me at Stories After Midnight. I also have a Twitter where I mainly retweet and like things I find interesting. The handle for that is in the description, but it is S_A_midnight. I should really find another one because that's hard to say. If you really like what I'm doing, consider joining the Midnighters. That's my growing community where we hang out and have fun and talk about cats. You can find a link to our Discord in the description below. We'd love to see you there. Other than that, it'd make me happier than a cat on a table full of antique glassware if you'd like the video and consider sticking around for more. We'll see you in the next one.